Hello and welcome to Green Beans Media. We're here standing outside the office of the Doughty Street Chambers. This is a very well-known institution. It's probably Britain's most famous human rights law practice. Among its members are the main part of the team who are defending Jimmy Lai in his international team in the current court trial. And perhaps more famously, it's the home of Keir Starmer, who is more than likely to become Britain's Prime Minister. He worked in these chambers. But we're not coming here to see Keir Starmer. We are in fact here to see Paul Harris, who was chair of the Hong Kong Bar Council, very prominent lawyer in Hong Kong, who had to leave under great duress after being accused of sedition by the Hong Kong National Security Police. So I'm going to go inside and we'll have a few interesting words with him.
Hello, Steve.
Hi, Paul.
Nice to see you.
Very good to see you too.
Holoi Moldy.
Holoi. Following you behind carefully. Paul Harris, you left Hong Kong about, 2.5, 3 years ago. What were the circumstances in which you felt obliged to leave?
I left in March 2022. I finished my term as chairman of the Hong Kong Bar in January 2022. And I received information via a secret channel, a tip-off, that I had to leave because Beijing had ordered my arrest. And when I got that information, I knew I had to go, and I sold my car, I gave up the lease on my flat, and I had to return my briefs, including representing Helena Wong and Lam Cheuk Ting in the Democratic 47 case, so they were deprived of their barrister. And I got ready to go. I couldn't go at once because I had a big ongoing case, a personal injury case. And I planned to leave around the 6th of March. On the 28th of February, the security police rang me and said, "We want to interview you. Please come to the security police headquarters tomorrow morning." I thought at that point that I was going to be detained indefinitely. I moved money around to make sure my son's school fees could be paid even if I was in prison. And I told a few people who needed to know what I thought was going to happen to me. And I arranged for 2 lawyers to come with me, not because I didn't know the law, but because I wanted people to know I'd gone in if I didn't come out. We went along to Wan Chai to the police headquarters, and I was told, "This is a formal interview under caution. We are considering charging you with sedition." And it was a video recorded interview under caution, and there seemed to be 2 things that they considered were seditious. One was that in my book, My Worldwide History of Street Demonstrations, which finishes with a chapter about Hong Kong, I had said that people demonstrated against the Fugitive Offenders Bill because they didn't want to be extradited to China because they couldn't get a fair trial there. And that statement they considered to be seditious in the sense of stirring up hostility to China to want to overthrow the regime. That's what sedition means. And the other one was that when the national security law was imposed, before that I used to tweet on Twitter, and I sent a tweet saying, "I'm not tweeting anymore because Hong Kong's become a police state." And saying that was also going to be sedition. And I definitely did say those things, and I make no apology for saying them. They are not sedition in any civilized country. I was not expecting to be let out. I had a prison pack, I had a toothbrush and a change of clothes and so on. But after about 2 hours, the officer said, well, those are all my questions, you're free to go. And
So you weren't actually charged at that point?
I wasn't charged, no. And I said, well, I'm planning to travel in the next few days. Am I free to leave Hong Kong? The officer said, at this moment you are. And I came out, I looked at my two friends, they said, you've got to go this minute. I went and saw my junior in my personal injury case, which still had 1 day of hearing, but video hearing. And she said, you've got to go, this is more important than your duty to the court. I went home, I packed 2 suitcases, went to the airport. My ex-wife and my son came to see me off at the airport, and I got the last seat on a flight to Istanbul, and I didn't know whether I'd be able to leave until the plane took off.當然我好唔開心，我而家唔可以返嚟香港。
Do you want to be back to Hong Kong? 你想唔想返香港？
我想返香港。香港係我嘅第二嘅屋企，因為我喺嗰度好多年，好開心，好多朋友，我好多地方我好鍾意去，所以我鍾意講廣東話。有啲人我鍾意睇，有啲人我掛書，而家我唔可以睇。我真係唔開心，我唔可以返工。
And let me just roll back quite a bit, because you came to Hong Kong, I think it is, in 1994. What made you do that?
I was the first chairman of the English Bar's Human Rights Committee. It's a long-established institution with its own budget. It's semi-autonomous from the bar. And we decided to just concentrate on helping judges and lawyers who were being persecuted for doing an honest job, or who might be persecuted for doing an honest job. And one thing was Hong Kong, 1997. Can we do anything to make the rule of law survive? And while I was chairman of the Bar Human Rights Committee, Martin Lee and Sito Wah came to see me in London and expressed their concern. So I did a mission to Hong Kong in 1993, and a lot of people said we need this independent watchdog to make sure the promises in the joint declaration are kept. And then someone said, why don't you come here and set it up? You set up that committee in London. You've got form, for setting up this kind of thing. And I didn't immediately say yes, but I thought about it, and eventually that's what I did. And that was how I came to Hong Kong.
So when you came to Hong Kong, you were just doing human rights type of law, or just general practice?
Not at all. In London, I was doing a general civil practice with no human rights work. My work on the Bar Human Rights Committee was like a second unpaid job. And I realized if I went to Hong Kong, I could do human rights work, because Hong Kong had a Bill of Rights, which was new then, and people were working out what it meant, and there were a lot of cases. And so when I came to Hong Kong, I did a lot of that, but I did a lot of other things too, because Hong Kong's not so specialized. And I did set up the independent watchdog, which was Hong Kong Human Rights Monitor, Hong Kong Yan Kun Gamchat.香港嘅法治而家係一個好困難 嘅地方，我諗係消失緊，因為已經有啲人係監房，我諗冇犯罪，佢哋好人，佢哋唔應該係監房，所以我好唔開心。
So you've been in Hong Kong, you were there just before the handover, you were there in the early years of the resumption of sovereignty. Did you at that time think that the rule of law could be maintained?
Yes, I did. There was quite a lot of optimism in the first years after the handover. Because before the handover, there were a lot of pessimists and a lot of frightened people saying, you know, you're going to prison as soon as the handover happens, and, you know, or you'll be chucked out. And this joint declaration, it won't last 6 months, it's just a fig leaf to allow Britain to get out. I didn't think so. And for really up until at least 2014, there was a feeling Hong Kong's got its own system, the system is stable, it does have the rule of law, it doesn't have full democracy, but it does have free speech. And there was a feeling that could continue indefinitely.
And now, here we are, you left. Is there such a thing as rule of law in Hong Kong, in your opinion?
In some areas, I think if you have a non-political type of case, particularly a civil case, there is rule of law. That, I think, is still there.
So your view of the current situation is that if you separate the law into two sections, the civil bit still seems to be functioning as an independent judicial system. The rest of it isn't. Is that what you're saying?
Again, non-political crime. You know, if you're a thief, or you punch someone or you murder someone, you know, I think there will not be a great difference in the way the trial is done from the way it would have been done over the years up till now. But I think what has happened is there's been a massive focus on secession, subversion, sedition, collusion with foreign forces, and this has really been used to suppress normal debate and free speech. And any sort of criticism on whatever level of the Communist Party line, I think a particularly bad case was the case of the speech therapists, the 5 speech therapists who published this children's book, which was, we'd probably call it a satire or a cartoon. It had the Hong Kong people as sheep and the Chinese Communist Party as wolves, and it had cartoon-type illustrations, and they were prosecuted for sedition and given quite long prison sentences. To me, that is not the rule of law.
The reason I'm pressing you on this is I always thought that there was an argument to be made that if the well is poisoned, if the well of the rule of law is poisoned, there won't really ultimately be any barriers to how far that poison can spread.
I think I agree with that, and that's another way of saying what I just said about things are continuously deteriorating. Judges who are trying to do justice are in a very hard position at the moment. There are plenty still left trying to do that. But if they decide something that Beijing doesn't like, Beijing reinterprets. We saw that with choice of counsel for Jimmy Lai. He chose Tim Owen from London, very appropriate and suitable King's Counsel. And it went up to the highest court and they said, he's entitled to choose Mr. Owen. There's no rule that because Mr. Owen's not Chinese, he can't represent him. And it was just overturned.
In fact, that's a part of the basic law, that the defendant is entitled to the counsel of their own choice.
Absolutely, yes.
But the situation now has come much more into international attention because of the resignation of some of these foreign judges who sat on the Court of Final Appeal, Court of Appeal rather. I'm just wondering, first of all, do you think they should have resigned earlier?
No, I don't. When I was chairman of the bar, I strongly opposed their resignation. At that time, Lisa Nandy, the Labour politician, was pushing hard for them to resign, and it looked as if they might be forced to. And I spoke to the English Bar Council by video and said, no, this is totally harmful. This will just make the system collapse quicker. And that carried the day at that point. And the way I look at it, preventing harm is a form of doing good. And simply by being there and giving honest judgments, they were preventing harm. Someone put it to me rather well when I discussed this issue. They said to me, your former clients who are in jail awaiting trial in the Democratic 47 case, you can be certain they all want the foreign judges to stay.
But what evidence is there that the presence of the foreign judges made any difference?
Well, you'd have to you'd have to look at all the cases. It works on two levels. It's not necessarily just the verdict, the decision. It's also the effect on standards. These foreign judges are the very top of the tree when it comes to judges. They're former presidents of the UK Supreme Court, the Canadian Supreme Court, and so on. And their calibre of legal reasoning is very high. And this is a good. It assists the local judges. So I was very sorry to see them go. I fully understand that there comes a point at which you cannot stay without becoming complicit in things that you shouldn't. I am not, and I fear we will reach that point, but I don't actually think we've reached it quite yet.
We have one of them, this Canadian judge, who has in fact resigned, who has issued this rather interesting statement about how the rule of law is flourishing in Hong Kong and is impeccable and all the rest of it.
Well, I haven't seen Beverley McLaughlin's statement. I think
Yes.
she's the person
Yeah.
you're talking about. And they are all different. And I would not go so far as to say it is flourishing. I would say it is under siege. But I wouldn't go so far as Lord Sumption went recently and said that it was becoming totalitarian and therefore he couldn't stay. Lord Sumption swung round very fast because just a couple of years ago he was saying he saw nothing wrong at all and he was continuing. And I think the position is really in between his two positions. Things have been deteriorating, but I believe those foreign judges can and sometimes do make a positive contribution to the rule of law. And I think it's good if they stay. Once they've gone, they'll never come back. And once they've gone, that'll be a big step towards a totalitarian state.
Do you, in the course of your, if you like, your British political life, do you sense there's much interest in Hong Kong, much awareness?
Well, much less than I would like. Of course, there are lots of Hong Kong people here now, and no one knows exactly, but somewhere between 160 and 200,000. And there are some towns where there are quite a lot of Hong Kong people, and Hong Kong is an issue, but on the whole it isn't. And people know very little about it, and this is rather depressing. But they never did know much about it. Some people do know, but it's not as widely known as it should be.
I mean, you're running for office at the moment as a Liberal Democrat candidate. I think it's fair to say the Liberal Democrats have more about Hong Kong in their manifesto than any of the other parties. But do you think Hong Kong will ever become a high priority issue in British foreign policy?
That's exactly what I'd like to see happen, but it will be a fight. Liberal Democrats have a very long record. Paddy Ashdown, you probably know, when the Beijing massacre happened in 1989, he went to Hong Kong and he joined the demonstrators in the street. And he felt very strongly about this. He was a Chinese speaker, and he made it high priority for him. I worked with him a bit in the last year of his life about Hong Kong in 2018. The Lib Dems won't change about Hong Kong. They do care about it, and that will continue.
But they won't be the government, to be blunt.
Well, unless there is some fluke of the electoral system. But the two major parties, there are individuals in the Conservative Party who speak out about Hong Kong. The government publishes its little 6-monthly report detailing anything that's going wrong, but what they don't appear to do is to link Hong Kong and the Joint Declaration to other issues involving China. What I think might achieve more is a linkage across policy. If China wants a joint investment project or wants some favour from Britain in another area, the British government should say, well, we're willing to do that, but you must observe the Joint Declaration in Hong Kong. And specifically, you must not charge people with offences because they support democracy. But it hasn't happened with the Conservatives, and on the Labour side, I detect no interest at all in Hong Kong.
And the Labour Party is more than likely to become the next government.
That's right. I find this very disappointing. They don't seem all that interested in foreign policy apart from one or two hot button issues. I'd like to try and do something to change that, but you know, there are limits to what one person can do.
Well, Paul Harris, thank you very much indeed. There's limits to what we could all do, I think.
Thank you, Steve.
而家喺英國嘅香港人，你會覺得喺而家呢一刻7月4號，佢哋應該點樣投票？
我好希望香港人喺英國會選擇真正關心香港嘅候選人。
This is perfect.
Right. Great. The last one felt better. Yeah.
Last one is perfect.
Yeah.